All right. Well, here we are once again. I just wanted to thank everyone for the views on the last video. I wasn't really expecting that many people to care. It was something I just kind of wanted to put out. So thank you. Thank you also to those 9 of you that subscribed. On my community tab, you're gonna see now. I just left a message. So if anyone has anything they want me to talk about or just want to say anything, just post it there or in the comments in general. I really, those are really fun to engage with or to comment back with. So yeah, so if you got any more, shoot me a comment on the community tab. I also got on an X account. You'll see it on the channel. You can always just tweet me there. I'll respond. I got nothing better to do. So feel free. So we're gonna move on from that little preamble to the topic for this video or this presentation, whatever you want to call it, for this ramble. And the topic here is genetically modified food or GMO food. This, I don't know why I want to talk about this one. I just really find it interesting, the discussion around it, because you really see people are kind of one of two ways. One is they either don't care, right, or they're completely against it. Those are really what I see, rather at least, the two kind of viewpoints for GMO foods. So what do I intend to do here? I really just wanted to talk about it, kind of the history of it, and kind of expand this discussion, because really GMO foods is a prime example, I think, of human ingenuity mixed with human greed. Now let's start off with the historical GMO foods or genetically modified organisms in our history, because unlike what many people think, this has been going on for generations, right? Because all that is required, right, for something to be genetically modified is if humans at some point modified its genes, right? Now, when I say gene modification, the idea that probably comes to your head is the lab, right? It's like Franken foods. It's these foods that have been, like, other animals' genes have been placed in them, and they contain part fish and part squid and what have you. But really, gene modification can happen at such a subtle level that it takes like generations, like, of this organism of propagation to see any effect. Now, a good example of a genetically modified organism that you can probably see constantly is the dog, right? Now, dogs are very different from what they were a couple 100,000 years ago. We, through selective breeding, have modified this organism into something very different. Now, why did we do it, right? Well, we did it because, the wild type of dog didn't suit the needs of early hunter-gatherers. They needed something else, right? They needed a dog, like a tracking dog, or a sight hound, or a companion, right? They need these animals to fill these roles in their life, right? And how did they do that? Humans simply did that by breeding those who showed those traits, and with others that showed the same traits to reinforce them. Now, while this may not seem like much, those traits that we see in these animals have a genetic component to them. We are selecting certain genes we want, certain genes we don't want, right? And now let's move on from Now that's pretty obvious to see from dogs, and let's move on from that to what people think about GMO is food, right? Let's think of corn, maize, right? Everyone has seen the original image of wild maize. It is a simple grass-like stalk with about 4 or 5 kernels on there, right? And if you compare that to modern corn that we all know, where it's like hundreds of kernels on the plant stalk, we see there that corn that we have now, you know, it's been modified, yes, but it's been modified because humans, through the generations, were breeding corn stalks that produce more with other corn stalks that produce more than their contemporaries, right? And that process of selective breeding created corn that produces a ton. And we see here that on the whole, on the front face of it, modifying an organism isn't necessarily bad, right? It serves its purpose within in our world, in human society. We need to produce more food. How do we do that? You can either plant more of this low yield crop, or you make it so that that crop will produce more in a smaller area by increasing the yield of a single plant. And this has been done for a ton of different things. It's been done with corn, like we said, wheat, grapes. They went through this too. And there's also more obscure nut trees. Humans have been eating nut trees forever. And all these things we've selected for higher yields. Another good one is the banana. The banana is like a wild banana, has very little flesh on it and huge seeds. Modern bananas have no seeds, right? And we'll get to that. And big fleshy fruit. Now, maybe you want to say this is unnatural, right? We are altering the natural state of these foods. So it's bad. Well, we have to also understand the symbiotic relationship we have with plants, right? It is, a lot of people think, not, it's not that. A lot of people forget that a plant is a living thing, right? And what the plant wants to do more than anything else is to propagate itself, right? Wheat would never have gotten to such a wild extent, right? There's wheat everywhere if it wasn't for humans. We have a symbiotic relationship with this plant. We help it propagate and it feeds us, right? It's not like we kill all the wheat all the time, because if we did, there'd be no more to plant. We have a symbiotic relationship with this plant, and the plant in turn also wants to keep itself propagating. So what does it do? It basically tries to strengthen that bond. So just as much as we modify it, the plant itself is also wants to be modified so that it can continue to propagate. It's a give and take. And this, beyond just humans, this has been seen throughout the natural kingdom. A good example, or an interesting example rather, is avocados, right? Now, an avocado has a huge seed compared to this fruit size, right? There are not many animals that can eat an avocado. And the only animal that did was the giant ground sloth. Now, giant ground sloths in South America were known to be dispersers of avocado seeds. Now, it's not like the avocados was scared it was being eaten. The tree wants itself to be wants its fruit to be eaten. So what does it do? It makes sure its fruit has it's tasty, it's high in fat. The animal wants to eat it whole. And what happened was that sloths would find avocados, eat them whole, and eventually shit them out, and giving a nice little fertilizer pile so a new avocado tree could grow. Now, this dynamic, you can say, well, maybe it's not. Is like, how are these genes being modified? Well, the plant needed a distributor, like a seed disperser, and it looked for one, right? And it looked for one, and it found one, and it changed itself to be appealing to that animal, so that it would be eaten and then would be passed. That relationship, even if you want to dispute it's not the same, it is a form of modification of the animal's genes to produce certain things or become more desirable to this animal. And in with modern fruits and vegetables, we see that as well. Humans, yes, we have modified these organisms, right? We made them produce more, but at the same time, we also help them greatly, right? We help them propagate. You know, and even if we look at animals as well, right? We said dogs, but let's look at cattle, right? Cows are not the same as the uruks from like millennia ago. The wild cows that were completely different. They were aggressive, they were huge, and they produced not as much milk. Humans selected certain traits and bred them into cattle, like being docile. Most dairy cows are not that aggressive. They're really selective. They're really docile. High milk yield, high muscle growth, right? Now, you can say, well, yeah, a vegetarian would say, well, we kill them. Well, we do. We kill cattle. But at the same time, that species the species doesn't really care if it gets eaten or not. What a species cares about is it propagating itself? And as we can see now, where there are tons and tons of cattle, that species, the cattle that is, has successfully propagated itself. There are more cows now than probably ever. And that's good for the cattle. That's good for cows as the species. They want to be everywhere, right? In nature, animals want to propagate themselves to their furthest extent. And our mutualistic relationship with cattle shows that, while yes, we have modified this organism, that organism would not have survived to the modern day without us and without our symbiotic relationship. Now, now again, a lot of people can say, well, this is different than what we see today. So let's move to the last 100 years of GMO. Now, GMO in the last 100 years has taken on a different intensity, let's say. Rather than slowly selecting traits over the years to help further certain qualities in the food we want to see, we have taken it upon ourselves to speed that along by directly targeting those genes, right? We've done this with CRISPR technologies, and we've done this pretty successfully, right? A big one I know of is the tomato. Now, tomatoes are notoriously bad at being transported due to not being well refrigerated. Because what would happen is that an older tomato, if you would refrigerate them, they would wilt. It would get very, very, very smushy. What happened was they modified tomatoes and inputted some cells from cold water fish. Now, the cells that they inputted into the tomato made the tomato able to handle refrigeration better, right? Now, while you may decry this as an affront to nature, if we look at it pragmatically, right, this has only helped many of us, because many people, myself included, don't live in an area or you can just grow tomatoes year on year, right? We have to ship them, and sometimes they have to be shipped for days on end, right? Now, no fruit or vegetable, whatever the tomato is, can really handle that trip in a non-refrigerated state, right? They're gonna get nasty, thus denying many of us a tomato. Now, this simple modification has allowed this tomato to be eaten almost anywhere they can afford it. They can ship it. You can get a tomato, right? This is, I guess, and this is where we would get to where it gets a little more gray, because that example is easy to say that's a plain good, right? It is, tomatoes. Everyone likes tomatoes. You get all tomatoes. Where it gets difficult is when we discuss foods and grains specifically being owned as intellectual property by corporations. And this is where this topic gets a lot more, like, as I said beginning, it's like human ingenuity mixed with greed, or it gets more greedy. A thing they've been able to do with GMO is they have been able to turn off the ability for some plants to propagate themselves. And what happens is that the companies, rather, they claim that crop as their intellectual property. So you, Joe Schmo farmer, can't simply grow them. You must make a deal with, X or Y. I don't want to say their names because I don't want them to suicide me at X or Y food company to buy their seed. This is where it gets shitty, because in times gone past, a farmer, what they would do, they would plant their crop, harvest, and they would keep some of the seed to replant. What happens is that what's happened is that we've been able to modify these organisms so that even if you keep the seed, you can't replant them. They won't regrow. Only specific seeds can do that. Only germinated seeds can do that. And the companies own those and give them out for the farmers to go plant. Now, this is really not good, because it makes these farmers reliant on these multinational food companies for seed crop, right? So what we have is that we have a lot of disputes where, for example, a farmer could get sued, hypothetically, if for whatever reason their crop got fertilized by another crop and they had seeds that could germinate, right? They had viable seed crop. They could be sued because they are breaking the copyright of the seed owner. You're not allowed to propagate. This is intellectual property the company has developed. And the reason we can say this is because the method and the specific strain of that seed was developed and is owned by that company. So you can't simply plant it. It is something that is now property, right? And this is, again, where it gets to where it's very, it gets to human greed. You have the possibility to make crops that are higher yield, that are drought. Like, a big thing is drought resistant crops. That's a big thing they're looking at right now. They're trying to modify some of these crops to be drought resistant, to be flood resistant, to be salt water resistant, right? These are all benefits. If you can make a crop that doesn't need as much water, that it doesn't affect it like salt, right? Salt's a killer. So you can plant it in areas where they may get sea flooding. And in a big one is pest resistant. And because, no one likes pesticides. And if you can modify, and what they're doing right now is they're trying to modify a lot of these plants to make them pest resistant, to make them insect resistant. But, and that's a benefit, right? Could you imagine not needing a drop of pesticide for an entire field of crop? Because it took care of itself. But the issue is that those crops are property, right? To grow them, you need a contract. This is where it gets shitty, because I want to say it's good, because that sounds amazing, but I don't like the idea of the average farmer being beholden to a multinational corporation who's, who doesn't really care about you, the farmer. It cares about making a profit, right? And for it to make a profit, it benefits them that you have to always come back to them year on year on year for a new seed crop. So that's where it gets kind of shitty. The thing with GMO is that, or anything that we use, anything modified, is it has such a possibility of such a massive benefit for humanity as a whole. Like I was saying, like drought resistant, heat resistant, especially in a world where climate is very erratic. Having climate resistant crops is a benefit, right? Right now in the States and in Canada, in a lot of these high yield grain producing areas, they're facing issues of it's getting hotter, right? And another big issue that faces crops now is pests. The thing about pesticide is that, just like anything else, the more they use it, the less of a result they're getting it from it. Insects evolve so quickly. Many of them are becoming resistant to these pesticides, right? The issue is that me and you, we're not resistant to them. They affect us. No matter what anyone says, they affect us. If they get into the water supply, they will affect us. So having crops that are resistant to these pests is amazing. The issue is that it takes a lot of money to modify these organisms. It's complicated. Like, I've made it sound so easy. They just go in, they do what they want, they get out. It's difficult to do, right? Touching genes is complicated and it affects everything. So, for them to do this, a lot of these companies, it's expensive, right? It takes a lot of R&D work. So yeah, you don't want to tell them no, you can't make money off it. Well, they put in the money, and who else is going to do it, right? I don't think Uncle Sam or Auntie Canada is going to be putting up the money to do this, right? They're too busy spending $1 million on research of feral cat research in Russia, right? To look into modifying crops. So you want them to make money off of it. The issue is that in some places, in some ways, it feels like it's approaching gouging, right? Farming is the bedrock of all human society. The reason why so many of us can live in an urban environment is because farming has become so efficient that we require less and less people to do it year on year, because the technology gets better, the crops themselves, like I said, improve, and we're able to feed more and more people with less and less work. The issue I have is these farmers, I think they need to be better compensated for their work, and I think they need to have less of a financial burden placed upon them, right? In the picture you see right now, that tractor probably costs over $100,000. That's a lot of money. And a lot of these larger farms have multiple tractors. And not just tractors. They need combines. They need trucks just to move stuff around. They also need probably maintenance equipment to fix this shit as well. It's a lot of money. A lot of farmers are in a ton of debt. And to pile on top of that they can't even keep the seeds they're growing, to me, is downright abhorrent, right? Again, I could not be like, I could not be even making this video if someone didn't make the food I fucking ate today, right? Look, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to sow a field or like dig trenches or grow potatoes. I don't know how to fucking do that. But someone somewhere managed to do that. And really, we should be trying to ease the burden on those that really supply the most to society, right? Because if farmers go, fuck all of this, right? We're dead, right? There's not enough like food in the forest for us to eat to sustain like 9 billion people or however much we have right now. It's not possible. So that's where I think my big concern is that these farmers are getting fucked, really, by these companies and a bunch of other people, but they're getting fucked. But the thing is, GMOs themselves have such a high potential. And that like I said previously, those resistances are amazing. If we could scale that up to make it, like, the possibilities are almost endless, right? So this is why I guess I want to talk about this, because it's so contentious, where both sides equally, not both sides, rather, GMOs have such a potential for the benefit of humanity, but it's just some actors that really control the GMO market are hostile. They seek profit, right? A company always, companies are, I don't like the idea of them being evil. They're amoral. Companies simply seek profit, right? That's it. They seek profit. And if they're not regulated property, they'll do whatever it takes to seek. They'll do whatever they want, right? They don't give a shit. It's not because they think it's good or bad. It's because a company is like any other organism. It wants more. It wants to eat. It wants to get bigger. So it'll do whatever it can to do that. And I want to just close this off by talking about the other side of the GMO debacle. The all-natural, holistic kind of craze. These guys, too, are... I almost despise them more than the companies that sell the GMO products. Is because they're just as much out for your money. The thing is, there has been growing in our consumer markets the idea of holistic natural food as a value, right? They're like, oh, these carrots, you've seen them, these ugly carrots, they have more value because they're natural, they're holistic, they're non-GMO, no hormone, all that type of shit. Now, the problem I have is that that kind of secondary market only is it has so many issues. They themselves are most likely owned by the same companies that sell GMO, so they don't give a shit. They're only there to profit off of high, upper middle class to high, upper class people and their perceived value of these products, right? How many times have you met the almond mom that they want to buy chips for their, I don't know, their dog's 8th birthday? It's their baby's 8th birthday, and all the neighborhood wine moms are coming there, so they need chips. And they look at Lay's like, oh, that's garbage. Let me buy this bag of chips that's worth 4 times more, most likely made in a similar facility, using a similar product. And it's just because of one thing or another, they can slap all natural on there. What bullshit. All natural, this is just a tangent. If you see something that says all natural, don't buy it. What the fuck you mean all natural? Was it fake? I've never had a fake meat. Can I eat fake meat? Is that the plastic meat you see in those Asian food displays? Fake? I don't get that. That's stupid. But this shadow market is completely bullshit. It's only there because some people want to think they're healthier by eating it, right? But it's look, realistically, that stuff, it's the fucking same, right? It's almost exactly the same. The only thing you really want to look out for is non-hormonal meats, right? This I kind of understand. You don't want to eat a meat that's been pumped full of testosterone or steroids or all that kind of stuff. So that I get. The other one I do understand, again, is antibiotics. You don't want a meat full of antibiotics. The reason why you don't want meat with antibiotics is not really because the antibiotics themselves, which do have a problem. The reason why is you also want to think about the conditions of these animals somewhat, right? When an animal is pumped full of antibiotics, it's most likely because they're in an environment that is stressful, in an environment that is crowded. So you don't really want that, because you do want to spend your dollar wisely, and you want to give your money to the farmers that don't shove fucking 8 chickens in a crate, right? You want to give them to the farmers that are a bit more respectable. But there again is a big fucking asterisk. The free range versus pasture raised, that shit, you have to be careful because they're fucking finicky with the wording. So I guess just check. And you have to be an educated consumer. If you care enough, check to see where your chicken's coming from, and you can find out whether it's pasture, which is pasture raised is like the quote unquote best because they're outside. Free range, they're still indoors, right? They're not in a cage. But at the end of the day, but the thing is, the other thing is this even discussion over what is better is coming from such a place of fucking privilege, and I hate to use the fucking word. Most people just need to eat. They don't want to. They don't care where it comes from. They need to eat. So, they don't care. They just have to eat food. I guess it's going off on tangent on like like what is good food, what is like bad food, and like the agricultural industry. Yeah, most people just need to eat. And this, we can tie back to GMO. Chickens and beef cattle, if they can be modified to have better immune systems, to just produce more meat, that in themselves could, again, help a lot of people out, right? Chickens that don't need antibiotics would be amazing. But here we are. They need them. Now, with that out of the way, we can, I think, start to wrap this discussion up. But yeah, it's going to be a bit shorter than the last one. I hope that's alright for all 9 of you. Realistically, GMO foods are not bad. You don't have to worry about them. What I would say is, like my last video, you need to be aware that there are certain actors and players that need to be curtailed. So if you can, buy from local. If you can and already ability, buy from a local farmer, right? It's always the best. Like I said, local is always better. You need to help your neighbor more than anything. And if that's not the case, call your congressman, call your legislator, and ask them, what is, your stance on these topics, on farmers' rights to retain seed crops. Because, again, they're extremely important. They're extremely important to the running of our world. But don't worry about them. Again, like I said, don't. But at the end of the day, the big thing is just don't fucking, like, if you take anything from this video, food is important, but you still gotta eat, right? At the end of the day, everyone gotta eat. So don't worry yourself over thinking that is it or is it not GMO. Most people that see this probably are just happy to be eating, right? You just need to eat. So don't concern yourself with like, is it good, is it bad? Just eat the food. You're most likely not gonna get like turbo cancer from eating GMO food, right? So just eat, enjoy, eat your chicken nuggets, eat your French fries, enjoy. So that's the video for today. Again, thank you for watching if you got this far. It is a bit shorter than the last one. I do apologize for that. I feel like this one is more an opinion piece. If you have any comments, please comment. Tell me what else you want to see. And yeah, have a good evening or day or whenever you're seeing this, and I'll see you in the next one.